There we go. Microphone was muted. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. I can't actually see you, but I know that you're all there. For people who are at home, there we go. Microphone was muted. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. I can't actually see. That's my delay. So I'm also watching the stream at the same time. There's about a 20-second delay on this, so you can tell we're going to be working through some stuff. That's going to play a factor a little bit later on, but I'll explain that in a bit. So a little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone should have a link to this presentation. So if you are in a virtual class, for example, if you're in the virtual half of a class, then your teachers can just provide the YouTube link so that you can watch it on your own browser. You don't need to do a screen share thing where everything gets dragged down and it's all choppy and everything like that. You just grab the YouTube link. It's on the school YouTube page where all the highlights happen, and you can watch it on your own browser. That way you'll have a little bit more of a chance to participate. You can sign into YouTube using your EMSB login, and if you have any questions for our guest speaker, you can pop those questions into the YouTube chat, and those will get filtered through me. So of course, keep them appropriate as always. I don't even have to say that, but I will be checking through those. And if we have any good questions, any good comments, then we'll filter those over to our guest speaker at the end of the presentation. So I got a co-pilot that I want to introduce before we get going here. I want to say a big thank you to Student Council, and a special thank you to Charlotte Kadir, who I'm going to pop on right here. Are you there, Charlotte?
Hi.
There you are. I want to say thank you to Charlotte, who and everyone at Student Council for all their hard work organizing these activities. We had other guest speakers for the other grades. We have more guest speakers coming next week for the cycle one. It's been a lot of work for you guys. I appreciate everything that you do and everything that CJ and the whole team has done to make this possible. So thank you. How you feeling?
Oh my God. Like already the first two presentations, like they had me on the edge of my seat, and like this next speaker I know personally, and like I adore them. They're amazing. And I'm very excited for everyone to meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we do our little intro, our little slideshow?
Yeah. All right.
All right. So we have a little video that we want to show. This is something that the team put together, the Student Council team. So I know the link doesn't work here, so I'm going to switch over to another link. 1 second. Sharing. I did the same thing last time. I didn't learn.
No. What? I thought.
No. I told you I was going to do it again. All right. Here we go. Here we go.
Faith.
Hey Westmount, my name is Lauren Dillon from Student Council.
Hey Westmount, my name is Sophia from Student Council.
Hello Westmount, my name is Mohammed from Student Council.
Hello Westmount, my name is Rose Minsberg from Student Council.
Hey Westmount, my name is Simon from Student Council.
Hey Westmount, my name is Marley from Student Council.
And together we, the anti-bullying team,
have worked relentlessly to bring to life a project that we think you'll all enjoy.
An adapted version of our anti-bullying day,
now called Hope Week.
We know that it's not what you'd expect in a typical school year,
but we still thought it was very important to put something cool together all the same.
And who knows, maybe you'll learn something new.
It like seriously, it's like every time you watch it, it's this cutely. Oh, your mic.
Thank you, Charlotte. See, this is why I need you.
There you go.
That video, this is one of the stronger student councils I've seen in my years here. So it's
wow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You guys have been awesome, and especially in such a hard context. This year's been really rough, but you guys have pulled together amazing stuff. So
I mean, CJ always says, "Dare to make a difference," right? So it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had the opportunity. So I'm going to let you do your introduction, and then we'll get
awesome.
To the speaker.
Okay. So, hey, Westmount, I'm Charlotte, if you didn't already know. I'm a member of Student Council, and on behalf of the Anti-Bullying Committee, we must thank for this amazing project. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for the period. So Sonali Alyy Patel, a trailblazing LGBTQ+ researcher, community organizer, peace activist, and motivational speaker who has made monumental strides for the LGBTQ plus South Asian women in the diaspora. That is a word that Mr. Bedard taught me. By age 23, Alyy pioneered Canadian research on queer South Asian women's issues, launched Halton Region's first Pride Festival, and founded the Queer South Asians Women's Network, a thriving national organization. Most recently, Alyy made Canadian LGBTQ plus history as the first South Asian speaker of Pride Toronto's Dyke March. So take it away, Alyy.
Thank you so much for that super fun and exciting introduction. Wow, that really just gave me all the quarantine hype I ever needed. So hi, Westmount. Thank you so much for having me. As Charlotte mentioned, I'm Alyy. I am now a 24-year-old gay, gender fluid South Asian Canadian of Gujarati diaspora. I was born and have been raised in Toronto, so I've been here all my life. It's been super, super fun. And so I have been doing these sort of keynote speeches and speaking as a motivational speaker in high schools for the past about 6 years or so. And it's been really fun. I took a little bit of a break for a while. So this keynote that you folks are receiving is actually really exciting for me because this is the first time I'm dropping so much wisdom that I've acquired and done a lot of reflection on. So I really hope that this is really informative. My method is to use a storytelling approach so that throughout this keynote, I encourage all of you to really think reflectively and look deeper into what I'm sharing, whether it's reflecting afterwards or reflecting during. Don't take it for face value when I'm telling stories, as I understand that obviously not everyone that is attending Westmount is a LGBTQ plus South Asian. If that resonates, that is fantastic, as we are super underrepresented. However, I really encourage everyone to look deeply into what I'm saying about themes such as authenticity, identity, empathy, etc., and take whatever resonates with you. So as I mentioned about that little break that I took, so I spent the past year and a half having a massive breakdown. My therapist calls it a spiritual awakening. I call it breakdown, synonymous, whatever. And this has a lot to do with what I'm going to talk about today, because it was really a soul-ripping identity crisis where everything that I thought I had known about myself, known about my identity. My work actually has a lot to do with identity. As a sociology student, grad student, I study identity politics. I literally have symbols of both of my identities tattooed on my wrists because being a queer South Asian woman, which is how I identified before was woman, has just been such a strong part of my identity. And strong part of the work that I do, as you learned from the introduction about me. So very, very fun to kind of have lost all of that. So I'm gonna actually kind of go through and tell you a little bit about my life before I go into talking about authenticity and about empathy. So this is actually really funny because as I was preparing for this keynote, I wrote so many different versions of this because I initially wrote a very authentic version, and then I tripped myself out and thought, oh no, maybe I should say this. Maybe they want to hear this. Maybe they want to hear my coming out story. Should I talk about my identity a little bit more in depth in the more surface level way? So it was really fun. I feel like, as I'll mention later, authenticity is a practice that is so ongoing that it's really constantly asking myself, what is authentic? What really feels good? And I mean, if you would ask me a decade ago, when I was in grade 9, if I ever saw myself doing a keynote, I probably actually would have said yes about the keynote. But if you would have asked me if I was doing it in a sari, absolutely not. Which is really fun and exciting that I am now, because as a part of my authentic self, really embracing all of my identities has been something that's very core to who I am. Actually, I'm going to back it up a little bit and tell you more about how sort of that even came to be is embracing my queer South Asian identity before I tell you how it all broke to shreds. But so back in high school, I grew up in a suburb of Toronto, and it was not a very diverse suburb whatsoever at all. And the only way to be authentic was to follow the norm, which really isn't authenticity, actually. They're very opposing and contrasting definitions to follow the norm and have that be expected how to be like the way that you're authentic. So being the one of the only South Asian kids already had me sticking out like a sore thumb. So assimilating was sort of something that was had to be done by virtue, which when I found a way to be as authentic as possible, and I will define authentic later, so I'm using this word in a lot of like bold emphasis tone right now for a reason. But so when I had, so in high school, I found my way to be as authentic as possible. And for me, it was really expressed through fashion. I was just known for like always having an aesthetic of statement necklace, heels, makeup done, dress, since elementary school, which is really funny because in elementary school, it was a lot of the commentary received was, why are you dressing like that? Like, that's kind of weird. And I just kind of really stuck with it, which is a little hint that I guess I'll come back to later, is really key to authenticity, is really just sticking true to who you are. And yeah, so although there was a part of my South Asian identity that I was really repressing, I sort of went throughout high school, and I guess to share a little bit about interweaving this with my coming out-ness, where I couldn't really embrace my South Asian identity. However, this actually made it easier for me to accept my LGBTQ plus identity and my queer sexuality specifically, because there's no representation of South Asianness in LGBTQ plus spaces. So in other words, I grew up thinking I was white because I was in a very white town. And this was a very interesting experience because when I went off to university, I was at the University of Toronto in the downtown campus. So it was very much a lot of exposure to Toronto's mainstream LGBTQ plus community, along with like just campus life and experiencing a lot of invalidation and an inability to be South Asian and queer. So it was a lot of just folks making assumptions about who I am, assumptions that I am a heterosexual because of the way I look. There's no way that she can be queer. And this is something that I've experienced all my life, where even in high school, it was a lot of, oh my God, is she gay? Is she gay? Until I finally confirmed 4 years later before we graduated in grade 12. And then it was, oh, she can't be gay. She doesn't look gay. And I'm like, this is all you've been asking me since grade 9. What do you mean? And so that was a very fascinating time to start experiencing a lot of that invalidation. And eventually I realized that a lot of the ways that my South Asian identity exists is very different from my LGBTQ plus identity, where with my South Asian identity, I can't tell my family that I'm gay. Like at this point, it's just kind of funny because I'm really living on the edge where I'm so publicly open about my queerness and the work that I do just because it's kind of everywhere and so public, but I'm still like hiding it from them, which is very interesting, but it's a way that I have been able to cultivate authentic identity, which I will also get to later. And so that exists. And then in my social spaces, very openly queer. And so I guess that's one of the main things that really conflicted, is that ability to be out, the ways that with white narratives and queerness, and really not being able to look like the predominant images of what a queer woman looks like because of my brown body, because of features of my South Asianness that are integral to who I am, like long hair, for example, or dressing like this would in any queer space have me read as outsider, not gay. And so that is sort of that invalidation and that challenge from both the queer community and the South Asian community of no, you can't be that other identity, that is what really initially took me to a place of so much anger that had me start doing this work that I'm really passionate about doing, which is advocating for queer South Asian women's visibility and really advocating for we are just one comprehensive identity, like have us be seen for who we are. And I wanted to be seen as, just one holistic, unique being. I didn't want to have to conform to the norms of either community, which was to look a certain way, to act a certain way. I was just very happy living my life as just very unique, very, very different, it was definitely very fascinating. And when I realized that this is the work I want to do, this is who I am, that's when I really started coming to piece together what I thought, or who I thought I was, which was queer South Asian woman, which still is very much like my identity is or queer gender fluid South Asian. But I realized that as I was doing this work that, my work is in this realm, my identity is this. And once I was doing this meditation once, and it said something about really like separating who you are as your person, as an identity from the work that you do. And I remember sitting there doing this meditation thinking, yeah, there's no way that's going to happen. Like, absolutely no way. My work is my identity. Like, how does that make any sense, right? And so that was one of the many moments in my life where I had realized that I was rejecting something in the way I was processing the information because I knew it was accurate, but I didn't want it to be accurate. And so that having that as really coming, it was definitely a moment of a lot of pride and a lot of self-acceptance when I realized that I could be a queer South Asian woman as a comprehensive whole, which is that folks, although it was being denied that, making the space, making this identity seen as one valid whole, but really feeling even then that like something is so deeply missing, like there's something else here at play. And that's really when I started experiencing in my life this massive, like the events leading up to this massive breakdown, which is everything really just seemed like it was falling apart in my life for like 3 years straight, like really, really, really traumatic things. And that I realized was the universe pushing me towards authenticity, where I had definitely thought I was living my most authentic life before, and I was. It's just I wasn't seeing my authentic self for the authentic traits. I was really focused on identity being these like labels of queer South Asian woman, where these labels, the difference between that and authentic self, as I'll get to as well, is that within our collective group labels, the ways that we see ourselves in those identity ways, it's very much there are norms associated with all of those identities, right? Like, for instance, with queerness, it's you realize you're queer, you have to come out, tell everybody. With South Asianness, it's very like, if you know something about yourself, don't tell anyone. It's very like, keep to ourselves. And amongst other things, at least with the sub-diaspora that I am. And so those are the parts of, I guess, identity that differ from authenticity. And so prior to 2020, if I was asked, even beyond like queer South Asian, like, what are you? My next answer would be a workaholic. Like, I don't stop working. I don't acknowledge my emotions. I, not in like a toxic way, but just, I was so heavily focused on like, gotta do the work. Like, I have to like really fight for this. I like really strong advocating, and not really just focusing on my essence. And so that made it really easy for me to crumble. And I was a very, 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 well, not was, still am, but resilient person. That's something that I very much have been known for all my life. And very much like seen as someone that just, keeps it pushing. He does not stop working ever. There's no amount of adversity that would bring this person down. I also didn't realize that like, I suppose I was just very naive, but I really didn't realize that I was things like bold, courageous, whatnot, on my pages until people would point these things out. And unfortunately, so I also like very much didn't care what most people said, and that's also a vibe that I gave off. But the difference was that I actually do very deeply care. And so as humans, just when people that we are close to, so our families, our partners, etc., when things are said to us by them, we're more likely to really deeply like take this in as, oh, this is something. So for me, my partners, my family, nobody ever told me the good things about me, like, oh, you're bold, you're courageous, it's fantastic. But it was more of shaming particular traits that I had loved about myself. So at my essence, what I've realized now is that my authentic self, I am extra as heck, like so extra. And I love that about myself. Like, to explain my personality, if anybody has seen the Mindy Project, I have all my life since that show has been up, been told that I have that same personality of Mindy in the show. And so like that is something it's a lot of energy to deal with, but a lot of the folks that I've been very close to really went out of their way to point out like, oh, this is terrible, like you should not, whatever. And it was just a very heartbreaking, but also being someone that is so naive really started like repressing those parts of myself, because I also have terrible people pleasing tendencies. We love acknowledging where our things come from. So, and just a lot of the ways that I was existing in the world had to do with that extra energy or pursuing my passions and just really following my heart. I never saw it as, oh, I have a very concrete plan of what I want to do. But when people I was close to would point it out, they would, point it out as a bad thing. And so that really hindered my authenticity to a point where I completely lost myself. And this is what I mean by I had a soul ripping identity crisis breakdown, because when the parts of me, like you're extra, you're like too much in terms of following this purpose or passion, or it's just having it like not even as explicitly as that, but just judgmental remarks towards and like comments that induce self-doubt in what you're doing and whether it's actually right, no matter how much you are aware of, oh, this is what I'm doing, it's right. But when people that you're really close to say it, it starts, it's something that sticks in the back of your mind, right? And so that's how I ended up losing my entire foundation, having it shattered. So that, for a while, I spent a long time after that trying to figure out, okay, like I acknowledge that I lost who I am. I don't know who I am anymore. What do I do? And so in response, I was really trying my hardest to bring back the parts of me that I thought were there. A lot of the things about me, like, for instance, I just very much, I spoke my mind, which not in a bad way per se, but it was very authentic. Like if I had something to say, I would say it. I wouldn't doubt my ideas. I was very confident in what I had to say. And I just remember at some point realizing like, I really am not doing this anymore. Like perfectionism really came out to a point of hindering what I need to say. And this was a very interesting point too, because when we are authentic, we are not doubting ourselves. We really trust ourselves and believe in our ideas. And this was quite fascinating for me to see that was no longer intact. And I can pinpoint exactly where that came from, was folks really projecting onto me, and throughout my life just having like my ideas be shut down when they come from me, but when it comes from other people, you know, how it's like seen as like valid. So on a very fundamental level, I knew it wasn't about me, but the way humans work, I was like, there's something wrong with me. Let me fix it. And yes, so getting into the fun part about authenticity now and getting into my realization. So I really realized that after I lost myself, I wanted to come back to my authentic self. So I actually didn't realize that authentic self has an actual definition in terms of like a proper conceptualized thing at the time. I was more of like, no, I just want to find me again, which is interesting. So when I started looking into it, I started realizing, oh my gosh, like I've been doing this identity thing wrong this whole time. And so the definition of authentic self is really in contrast to, the term is called fictional self. I don't really like fictional self. I think it's more of just a surface level identity. And so the surface level identity, or fictional self, if that's the term you prefer, is who the world has told you to be. And then authentic self, on the other hand, is very much of, the answer is not who you are in terms of like what you do, what your social like situation is, or how you see your own function in life. It's more of going further into that other deeper layer of identity that's your real, true, genuine substance of who you are, like the very, very core of who you are. That is your, just makes up your foundation. And so authentic self isn't defined by your job. It's not defined by your function, not by your role. It's rather the composite of all of your skills, talents, and wisdom that you have acquired. It's really all of the things that make you so uniquely you, rather than what you believe that you were supposed to be and what you were supposed to do. So in other more spirituality terms, authentic self can be seen as who you were created to be. And this is a very long and ongoing process of figuring that out. But the reason authenticity and finding our authentic selves is such a beautiful and just such a wonderful process and way of living is because it is the, research actually has found that it is the way to achieve ultimate highest level of well-being and happiness in life. And so to talk a little bit more about authenticity, and so what does authenticity entail? How did it look any different from what I knew about my identity before? So in my case, what I knew about my identity before was that, oh, I'm queer and South Asian. Both of these queer and South Asian like cultures don't want me to be the other. I'm going to be the in-between / be whatever I want to be, which is queer South Asian woman. My focus was on that surface level identity. But what are we actually seeing in this case? My authentic self was that I don't want to conform to norms. And this is a pattern that I've noticed all throughout my life in other ways, is I really don't like sticking with the traditional ways of doing things. I really love to challenge the norms, challenge the ways we think about things, and put very unique ideas out there. It's something about me that some people have flagged as weird, some people have flagged as perhaps rebellious or outspoken, and other people have just plainly liked, which is honestly fantastic. We love supportive people. And it's very interesting because once I started, I really thought that, oh, maybe like this line of like activism that I was so passionately pursuing isn't actually what I'm supposed to be doing in life. Just, I'm a very curious person, and I really am very intense too. So I'll go out of my way to figure everything out. And so because of that, I was very like, oh, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I need to like, find who I am. But really, I think it took a solid 11 months to come back to the full circle loop. In this case, where I realized that, oh, my answer was actually right there. Like, it's not that my focus is just on that like queer South Asian woman identity alone, when really it should just be like my authentic self just like likes to challenge things and like stir the pot up, which is really fun. And so knowing that about myself has really been very helpful in terms of how I navigate the world, because now, despite those people-pleasing tendencies and that really happen to come up for me, I am very much able to identify that, oh, like when I'm doing something I know about myself is like liking to challenge the norm. Something I know about myself is that I'm super extra. So when comments are made, no matter who they're coming from, towards me, I don't lose that sense of who I deeply feel like I am and what I can do. It's almost like I now have a better ability to decipher what is going on. And in this sense, I really mean, and I'll go on to talk about this later on, empathy, but really having that ability to decipher, oh, this is actually like a huge piece of wisdom and life hack that I realized. So when people say something that is like, when people shame, judge, or criticize or bully like other people, I learned that this is actually a projection of traits that they see within themselves and don't like within themselves, or a something that they know that they have like the potential of, or it brings up a deep rooted fear. And it all exists on such a subconscious level for everybody that it's so hard to pinpoint and come to this level of self-awareness, where it's also, so for example, and I'm actually going to give an example because it takes a lot. So when I was growing up, people always made, like a lot of white folks made curry jokes towards me. And it's not that they were projecting that they secretly like curry. Like it wasn't that simple. It was more of, I can guarantee, coming from a place of wanting to maintain some sort of dominant upper hand in their privilege. But it's also, if they looked deeper into it, probably would come back to a deep fear of not being in control. So that's what I mean by the projections. And so just by being able to come to a better understanding of some of my authentic traits, I now have this better lens of when things are projected onto me by loved ones, I can see, or when things are said, like criticisms that come towards me, I can better understand, is this something that they're projecting, or is it something that I genuinely need to work on? Because before, it was, if a loved one was saying it, I would take it as, oh, you must be like absolutely right, like let me fix this about myself, and end up like hindering what made me happy about myself. And so some other, like some really important traits for authenticity and cultivating authenticity are humility and self-awareness. So this is something that I've actually been making quite a lot of reference to. For instance, me sharing that I have people-pleasing tendencies. This comes from a deep place of self-awareness, where if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I have people-pleasing tendencies, I would have said no and been so offended that was even put out, because I was so sure of myself that, oh, well, like I know what I want in life, like whatever. And that even comes into with a place of humility, of being able to really acknowledge things within ourselves that are difficult to admit. And so that self-awareness work helps us really strip back on the parts of us that aren't actually us. And so when we talk about authenticity and who you were created to be, a way to really get to that point in life is by really looking at, okay, so what are the parts of us that throughout all of our lives, like, start from childhood, looking back at what within us was shamed as we were growing up, was something that you were taught isn't a norm, something that you were taught is bad. And this is like, I mean looking at things such as, for me, for example, it was, I just like to be very happy and very like extroverted and very like a lot of childlike innocence all throughout growing up. But I was told by family, by partners, whatnot, that, oh, like that's too much, like tone it down, or you can't be like running around just being that enthusiastic about everything. And it's so things like that. I mean, obviously not things that are just extremely illegal by being told things are bad, like taking those things out. But so that's sort of what I mean, is really looking at conventions and norms of society and like really seeing how that really impacted us, because sometimes it can really put lovely traits about ourselves into a shadow. So if anybody is familiar with shadow work, that is something that is very important and very significant for cultivating our authentic selves. So I recently was seeing a self-love therapist, which is really, really ironic for me, because all my life I've been like, no, I love myself. Like, I'm fine. Like, I know exactly who I am. And, when that breakdown happened and I was just like, who am I? Whatever. Like, I feel like I need this. And so I was explained by my therapist, by that self-love coach, that what shadow work really is going into us and looking at what are the traits that we view within ourselves that we don't like. But a way to do this is by looking at so for example, when interacting with other people over the span of a week or two, making note of anything that you really strongly emotionally react to. So I was doing this during quarantine when I was forced to quarantine with my family. So this really wasn't a difficult task at all. So especially with like my sibling who I don't get along with very well, when she would say or do things, I found myself often reacting a lot. So I would, as soon as that would happen, I would go and journal about it and try to ask myself a lot of why questions. And I figure out, why does it bother me that she is making remarks about the way that I just function in my everyday life? Why does it bother me that she talks about my depression without contextualizing it? And so I really got through that to a realization of, I actually just don't like being controlled. And so through that, I was able to really figure out a lot of shadows, a lot of the deep roots of things. And from that, it was just a very liberating experience, because I was really able to purge parts of me that don't belong. And in doing that, really able to mend my relationships with others, where things that I had previously been reacting to strongly, even with my sibling who, I've just not really gotten along with all my life, and who also outed me to my mom and threatened my safety and me violence. And so it was something that was a very difficult relationship to want to nurture. But I found myself no longer reacting as strongly, because within me, I knew where it was coming from. And so I think I will get into a little bit more of empathy here, because it's really important here to talk about understanding others. So when we understand ourselves, and when we have that self-awareness of why am I doing what I'm doing, but more specifically, really that ability to admit to ourselves, like, am I doing something that is hurting others? And this is actually something that's very difficult to do. Even if you are a very compassionate person, we can always do better, right? And so, and nobody wants to admit just super easily, just by human nature, that oh yes, I do, I am hurting XYZ person. If you do, then I mean, you're just natural born empath, and that's fantastic. But it really provides, understanding ourselves provides a sense of understanding others, because the way that humans function is that anything that we don't understand turns into anxiety. And if we can't pinpoint where that anxiety is coming from, then it takes away from our own life and time that we're spending. And so we don't have to be able to pinpoint everything about everyone, but if we can empathize with others on the general essence of why they're doing what they're doing, is that whatever it may be, then even if it's hurting us, it provides us some sense of deep relief and liberation. And so that's a little bit on why empathy is important. But to jump back to authenticity and some other traits, so that pairs perfectly with loving kindness. And so we talked a little bit about doing the self-awareness work, having humility, and that ability to really acknowledge, oh yes, I have hurt so-and-so, because a lot of the examples I was giving was how other people are towards us, but it's also important to do that work of how are we possibly hurting other people, because when we are hurting other people, when we lack that ability to empathize with people, we are not being true to our authentic selves. Authenticity and empathy go really, really hand in hand. in this sense, because if we're not putting out love and kindness in the world, we really are being very unkind to ourselves, and it's coming from a deep-rooted place of self-hate. And so loving kindness, this term is interesting because it's a term that I actually ran from all my life, but I finally came to and realizing, wow, like this is so interesting. And the concept of loving kindness is putting out kindness in all of our relationships with others and into ourselves. So authenticity is really just a game of balance, balancing, acknowledging who we are and confidently knowing it, but also recognizing that, you know, as humans, we're constantly changing and fluid and moving with the waters, and also balance in the sense of balancing that compassion for ourselves and understanding of ourselves with understanding of others, to make sure that we are not hurting ourselves, nor are we hurting others. And so loving kindness, when I first heard the concept, I was like, yeah, there's no way that this actually works. Like, you know, you really, like, the whole concept in meditation is like, breathe in like all the hardships and the struggles and challenges of what everyone is going through, and breathe out kindness. It's almost like you're helping make the world like a better place in terms of like just putting out kindness, but like soaking up what, like, all the toxins that are there. And I practiced this for when I started practicing this, I actually noticed that I was a lot kinder in all of my interactions, but also with myself, and had a deeper ability to understand myself, understand like how I see myself existing in this world, and myself in relation to other people in a much deeper way, where it was almost like I knew that the sun doesn't rise and shine around all of my desires all my life, but practicing loving kindness and having this ability to cultivate a deeper level of empathy for others was almost like seeing that, oh, like I do matter, my needs matter, and so does everybody else's, and what can we do to like just really having, I guess, like when you are kind to other people, you feel better about yourself, and it comes from a place of when you were unkind to other people, it's usually deeply rooted in a fear and insecurity and a trauma. And so having that ability to step back, work on whatever is the root of the issue and healing that root, and then putting out kindness in the world comes really naturally. So then when you're authentically putting out that kindness, you're not hurting yourself, you're not hurting others. You are just very true to the essence of just being and existing in this universal realm. And so that is loving kindness, that is self-awareness, humility. Humility is a very, very important principle to embrace. And so with humility is also vulnerability. And so humility and vulnerability and like self-awareness and kindness, like that little mix of things, all of that is the secret to healing and making an impact in the world. And by vulnerability, what I really mean here is having that ability to really be able to critically reflect on ourselves, on our own actions, on admitting things about ourselves that can be very difficult. So what I was mentioning about shadow work is being able to really, it's almost like the way my therapist had phrased it was finding a way to love all of your flaws. I don't like to use the word flaws too much, but I see it just more as areas to work on, areas for improvement, if need be. And so really being, I guess, in a better example is if you've hurt somebody, being able to really put out there like, hey, like, I'm sorry that I hurt you. And that is a great example of humility too. And with vulnerability of putting out, just like not holding ourselves back. Like if, I think an example that a researcher, Brené Brown, had used is folks that found themselves vulnerable were most vulnerable in situations like, for example, telling somebody that they have a huge crush on them. But just that ability to have that release was very vulnerable, but also very liberating. And not having that fear hold them back of a fear of rejection, a fear of whatnot, of like embarrassment. And so that helped people cultivate authenticity. And so authenticity is a very packed definition. Authentic self is a very packed understanding, but really the very core, the very essence of it can be really broken down into like resisting external pressures, expression of true self, contentment, and owning up to one's own actions. And in contrast, inauthenticity, if we were to look at some of the major dimensions of it, it would be things like, being fake, suppressing what we want to say or feel or do, self-denigration, and conformity. And especially conformity to things that don't actually make us happy. And a lot of the times we, on a very subconscious level, actually find ourselves really conforming without realizing. And it's not our fault. Like, a lot of the things that we do are just the ways that we've been socialized in this world. It's really important to remember that everyone is really we're all just humans in this world, just trying our best. And that's why it's so important to work towards finding our authentic selves and work towards just cultivating a life of like living from a place of authenticity, because it just really, there's so much relief. There's so much like deeper understanding of what are the things that we're doing that make us unhappy, or is this something that I genuinely want to engage in and do, or am I doing it because I want to make someone else happy, kind of thing. And so going on to talking about, I guess, a little bit more about how to practice authenticity and express. So expressing authenticity is very much what I was just talking about in terms of vulnerability and humility. And for me, expressing authenticity has really just been, ever since coming to this place of self-awareness, self-acknowledgement. Anytime, for an example, in my relationships now, when there are issues that come up, I am able to have that self-understanding of, oh, I'm doing something that hurts you. Where does it come from for me? Because I've gone through and done those work to see what my deep-rooted fears are, whether it's a fear of failure or like fear of like abandonment, whatnot. And then that, by virtue, has been able to help my relationships with others, help my understanding of myself, because I feel like it's easier for me to not do the things that would cause me a lot of distress, or understand and have that compassion for myself to understand, okay, this is why I was really distressed by being so hurt in experiencing family violence or in experiencing like invalidation, is because it comes from a deep-rooted fear of like abandonment, deep-rooted fear of whatever else, right? And so all of these, it definitely took a lot to come to that place of being able to express that level of vulnerability and humility. And that's very natural for everybody. If you're sitting here kind of listening like, oh yeah, like that would be so easy to do, good luck. I really thought that too. I really, like, in all honesty, thought that like, oh yeah, this won't be that hard to do. Like, this is not, like, I get it, like I can do it. But it's like when you really start doing the work, you realize that it's an ongoing process that's never going to end. Like, it's like it's like you realize that you are actually like just an onion existing, and you keep peeling back layers, and the layers just don't stop. And so as I was saying, to practice authenticity, it is an ongoing practice, and it's also tested in everyday interactions with how you treat others, and also how you treat yourself, and especially how you treat yourself after a bad day or after getting a bad grade back, and how you, like, for example, did you have a bad day, and are you gonna go and just yell at your sibling or your parents because you were angry about things within yourself? And if that's something that you do, having, vulnerability and humility, cultivating those things, is being able to step back and say, yes, this is something that I just did, not shaming yourself for it. But then it's absolutely okay to just go and apologize, which is oftentimes the hardest part for quite a lot of people is having that sense of ego that really hinders us from living our best lives. And to go on a little bit about empathy. So if folks know a lot about empathy or they don't know, so some people are born empaths, but I also strongly believe that empathy can be taught. So when I say some people are born empaths, you might have like heard, I see this on TikTok all the time, so I feel like this is now like within the realm of broad knowledge that just Gen Z just has. So that which TikTok, that like part of TikTok where it talks a lot about intuitive knowing and like just being able to like read other people's thoughts and like just intuitively sensing things and feelings in the room. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I probably sound so absurd and I'm so sorry. But so folks that are born empaths have this intuitive like sensing where they can feel other people's feelings a lot. And many people don't actually know that they were born empaths. I don't know if there's too much research into whether it's a genetic thing. I'm pretty sure it is from the last little bit of research that I read, where it's sort of just like for example, with me, I never realized why I react so strongly to other people's energies. And if people are just like, if there's a lot of negative energy surrounding me or just people that are very like experiencing their own thing, I tend to absorb it. And until I started doing this work of cultivating authenticity and like realizing, oh, I'm actually like an empath, a highly sensitive person, because, you know, like I really walked around for like 22 years of my life just genuinely believing like I was a bad person, because that's, I mean, different realm of trauma that I was like exposed to, but just really not believing like that there was any way that I could be a sensitive person. But hey, apparently I was an empath. Apparently I am an empath, a natural born one, but it's also something that can be taught. So the opposite of empath is narcissist. So to explain both definitions as a contrasting thing, an empath is somebody, like a learned empath at least, is someone that really focuses a lot on understanding other people's situations, understanding other people's emotions, and having that self-compassion and not wanting to hurt like anybody, either consciously or subconsciously. That I believe is what learned empathy is. And so narcissism, on the other hand, is also seen as like this epidemic right now, as researchers discuss it. But narcissism really focuses on this desire to control other people, just a complete lack of awareness for other people, not really seeing outside of ourselves, and really doing a lot of, so folks that are narcissists are not living authentic lives. Like these are people that are actually so deeply unhappy that they will go out of their way to harm other people. So yes, you can be born a narcissist. I'm just a very hopeful person where I'm like very certain that this can be worked on. And like, I think that if anybody genuinely, if you have the will and the desire to change something, you can do it. Like, I really don't think that genetics in terms of like narcissism is something that like is like, oh, well, I'm just a person that wants to run around controlling someone. Like, so yes, so that is the key difference between empathy and narcissism. So working from a place of empathy to cultivate our own authentic selves, and really coming to a place of just self-awareness, self-knowledge, and how we like treat others is very important. One, as I mentioned, so that we can understand others and alleviate our own anxieties, but also, so it's really a lot about when we are our most authentic selves, when we have cultivated that empathy, we're able to not feel threatened by somebody else's success. And so this is also that like feeling of threat by someone else's success, someone else's wellness, is something that drives narcissism, right? And so when we have empathy, instead of driving that energy outward of projecting like this desire to have something such as someone is very confident, you don't feel confident. A narcissist would project that as shame. And I mean, not everyone that projects shame is a narcissist, but someone that like would go out of their way, or just in general, like even narcissism aside, just in general, just somebody that would project that as shame or as criticism of someone else's success because it comes from a place of jealousy and envy. That would be driving that energy outward, which honestly is a waste of energy, because if that energy was turned inwards into working on ourselves, cultivating authenticity, and you start really focusing on your own success, then you will find yourself being able to be happy for other people's success, because you will be able to see that they've really been working on themselves too, and that draws empathy to other people. So it's very much about, it's like empathy is really a game of energy. Like it's like acknowledging that we all as humans have a limited capacity. And if you're anything like I have been growing up all my life, I'm like, I don't have a limited capacity. I had so much energy. Like there is no limits to my capacity. I learned the hard way that there is. So that's why I'm like laughing at myself. But it's really, when I say empathy is a game of energy, it's really just like that negative energy that exists is very, very heavy. So whether you're like putting that negative energy out onto other people or putting it onto ourselves, i.e. being unkind to others or being unkind to ourselves, you are really weighing yourself down. Like that's the essence of what I mean by you will not be able to find your authentic self, and that unhappiness that really comes from like that, or that deep sense of like there's something missing, kind of comes from this exactly. And so that's why it's really important to practice self-awareness, so that we can provide ourselves this form of relief as well as like straying away from projecting our pain, our insecurities, our traumas onto others on a very subconscious level. And so further on that is like those skills that like you will find yourself really nurturing and cultivating through the self-awareness work and this work towards developing authenticity. When you enter adulthood, they turn into self-soothing strategies, because as you will probably realize, the very essence of every problem is more or less the same when you realize that you need to find a way to cope. And so if you know that you've done this before, you will very easily be able to have that strength to deal with anything, like no problem. And so everything that we do in response to a hurt or a problem is, whether it's projecting, shaming, or changing ourselves, anything like that, those are all just like an attempt to self-soothe. So if we've like done the work for authenticity, for like cultivating empathy especially, all of these things are positive ways to self-soothe and will really be able to drive our success. And the last little bit that I really wanted to talk about in terms of like empathy and authenticity is that when we are being true to ourselves, when we have really, when we've done this work to take away parts of us that don't like make us happy, parts of ourselves that we are repressing, like really coming to find who are, like what makes us happy, what are like just living our best lives. When you are living your most authentic self, there's this concept of raising your vibration. So you will be raising your vibrations to a point where you are so naturally attracting things into your life that work for you instead of against you. So if you find that you are experiencing just so many hardships in your life, like so many patterns of bad things happening to you, and I get this so deeply. I went through like a lifetime, but specifically like a 3-year chunk of just very strong patterns of things going wrong, things like hurting, like loss and things. It was almost like the universe wanted me to learn certain lessons about things and go through this authenticity work to really come to a strong sense of who am I at my core? Can I like release and let go of parts of me that don't work in a healthy and positive way so that I can happily like live my life? Like when I've done that, I have definitely seen the positive benefits of this, where things will just like people that were hurting me have just disappeared from my life. Not even something that I had to like go out of my way to do. And a lot of even just like getting out of my experience of family violence, that for like being queer, just like ways that the like things that were just happening, and like, you know, opportunities to exit that house during quarantine from a South Asian household, which is really difficult, let alone during quarantine, like started just being presented, and just being surrounded by good people and opportunities coming to you. So it's really like that benefit of working towards finding your most authentic self, authentic identities, and cultivating empathy. It's really a mutual benefit for yourself and for the world around you. And really the essence of it is just really embracing our uniqueness. And it's really easy to pick on someone, to criticize someone, to judge and shame. And these things don't go away even after you're done school for a lot of people too, where like, you know, it's just something that happens so naturally and so easy. It's just turning to negative energy is just such an easy default option, even though it's fundamentally like heavier for us and worse. But just really, you will find that that ability to go deeper into like who we are brings so much liberation and happiness. And this, for me, comes from a place of, I really didn't think I would live to 24 years old 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago. It, like, or pretty much all of my life, really. But when I really started unlocking authenticity work, I found that my mental health was significantly improving, and really started unlocking empathy, even though I am a natural born empath, you know, just really finding that I'm able to understand better what I am, just the energy, just being me, and being happy. And yes, I'm still a queer South Asian gender fluid individual. That is my identity, my surface level identity, but I'm able to pursue the work that I'm doing, this work that I'm so deeply passionate about, from a deeper understanding of, you know, I'm just a person that likes to challenge the norms, and this is my authentic self, and not having anything hinder that process, unlike it did before. So that is really just my key takeaway is be your unique self. I promise it is so worth it. Having humility, embracing empathy, all of these things, so important. Yes, that stay true to yourself is a very cheesy line, but very much mean it. And so something I was going to recommend is, if you have time later, I definitely recommend journaling about authenticity and what your key takeaways are from this keynote. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to follow any of my socials, it is at ALYYPATEL, Alyy Patel, 1 L 2 Y's, because I'm just really extra. So
Thank you so much, Alyy. That was wonderful. I absolutely adore the themes that you covered there: authenticity, humility, empathy. I think you really covered some really key topics there. I do have a question from the chat, if I can bring that in.
yes, please.
So we have a question from Julia. How do you decide the difference between toxic traits that genuinely need to be fixed and things that others view as bad and think you should fix, without being ignorant to your own bad traits? It's a multi-layered question, but I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fantastic question, without being ignorant to your own bad traits. So something that, if you're unsure of whether this, it's something that is existing within you, something that I will always do is I turn to journaling, and I like to ask myself like questions of really reflecting on this trait. Is it a thing that I see within myself? And really coming to a place of trusting myself and trying to find examples. And if you find that that's difficult, I also recommend asking the person that brought it up of, can you please give me examples of this? If they're unable to give you an answer, or just give you a flat out answer of, well, you should know, you could probably take that as an indicator that somebody is projecting on you. But it's also just a really good practice to really reflect on ourselves. And really, when I say journaling, what I really like to do is going in and writing everything as honest as possible to myself, because nobody else is going to read that journal, even if you admit things about yourself that are difficult. That's a pretty good way to see. And if you honestly don't see that fitting in your life, but see that it could possibly be a projection from the other person, then that's kind of a good way to decipher. It's definitely a practice that you will cultivate over time.
Yeah, I love that. That's really important, self-awareness, and you really get that through reflection, right? And journaling is such an important part of that. Okay, well, I'm gonna bring in Charlotte. Charlotte, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm alive.
So we only have a few seconds left. I know we want to give some time for everyone to wrap up, but I want to just say thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be here with us and to speak with our students. And I want to thank Student Council. I want to thank Charlotte for bringing in that connection. It's really
I
really
told you they were amazing. Like, did you doubt?
I never, not for a second, you know, Charlotte. I know I trust you, Charlotte.
Like, seriously, just give a little, like, this was super important to me. I mean, like, especially in Sec 5, like, I know all of us, some of us, you know, something I remember one of my classmates said to me once that really stuck with me was that, like, sometimes we pretend like we have everything. Like, we have all our, can I swear? Is that okay?
No, please don't. We're live. Remember that.
Okay. We have all our stuff together. When we have like everything figured out, like sometimes we put up that front. And some of us, to some degree, we know ourselves, but kind of like how, you know, Alyy put it, sometimes we think we know ourselves, and then we have this like one day of just like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, I don't.
No, you don't have it all together, right?
No, and it's really annoying. Like, I'm also someone who really needs like control over things. It's not great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Thanks for censoring yourself, Charlotte. That was well done there too. And
So
we're gonna let everyone start packing up because they got a long weekend to look forward to. So I want to wish everybody a nice weekend. No school tomorrow. It's a PED day. And once again, thank you so much, Alyy, for taking the time today.
thank you so much. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so wonderful and exciting. I hope folks were able to learn a lot from this.
I know I did.
Absolutely. All right, guys, signing off, ending broadcast here. So we'll see you soon.
See ya.